Voters and Town Meeting Members Association Friday morning discussion. It's all you need to know about the September 6th primary and how to vote. I'm Betsy DeWitt, President of the League of Women Voters of Brookline, and we are joined by the new Town Meeting Members Association President, Carlos Rudiero. And Carlos, I'm going to ask you to make a few comments, but just for a moment, let me introduce our speaker, Ben Kaufman, who is our town clerk and who's going to help us understand voting in the September 6, 2002 primary, how to get accurate information. Because of re-precincting, we know that people are sometimes confused about where you live and therefore where you vote. And I know because my precinct 5 got redistributed at least. And so I now have a different state representative, a Massachusetts state representative compared to the one that we used to have. And for some people, I can understand this is very confusing. Anyway, Carlos, do you have any thoughts, comments you would like to introduce?
Thank you, Betsy. And thank you to the League of Women Voters for inviting us to collaborate for these information sessions. I think this is going to be the first one of a few collaborations, and we're looking forward to that. As the TMA is always working to see how we can do things better for our town meeting members. And thank you, Ben, for joining us today. I may just as well kick it off with the first question, if that's okay, Betsy.
Please do.
Yes, so there was a lot of discussion about sort of the status of different candidates for governor. And if you could just give us a run through of what the status is for each of the candidates, if they're running, not running, and also, you know, of course, who can we vote for on the ballot? Is it any different from what people have heard around there? So thank you very much, Ben, for joining us, and that's our first question.
Awesome, Carlos. Thank you. That is an excellent question, and I know there's been some conversation about who's actually on the ballot. So to help clear that up for people, there are two ballots, a Democratic and a Republican one. On the Democratic ballot, there are two candidates that will be listed. They are Sonia Chang Diaz and Maura Healey. And then on the Republican ballot, there are going to be two people listed as well, and that is Jeff Deal and Chris Doherty. I know there's been conversation on the Democratic side about the status of one of the candidates. So there's a candidate who had announced publicly that she was suspending her campaign and was no longer running. However, that came after the deadline to withdraw from the election. So it is on the ballot that both Sonia Chang Diaz and Maura Healey are listed. Voters are allowed to vote for either one, or they can write somebody in if they would like. And as long as the person who gets the most votes is eligible for the nomination, they will be nominated.
Thank you. Any other comments, Carlos, before we just turn it all over to Ben to give us the how to do it from basics?
No, that's all from me. Thank you so much.
And Ben, what I think people should be reminded are things like deadline. I know we're right at the deadline for the applications for remote voting. And I guess I also want to add, which I will reinforce at the end, is that you've been making a request for volunteers to become poll workers on September 6th. I hope you have had some responses, but if you haven't filled all the slots, then I appeal to everybody to consider taking that on. It's an important part of our democratic process.
Thank you, Betsy. I appreciate it. And actually, I do have some slides, but before I get into them, on poll workers. We were very, very short of poll workers. Just the timing of the election being the day after Labor Day and being the first day of school was very difficult for us to get enough poll workers, especially when you factor in that with redistricting, we added a precinct, we added a couple of split precincts that I'll talk about in a second. So we had a really high need for poll workers. So we sent out the call, and organizations like the League of Women Voters, like town meeting members, really stepped up. And actually, I am happy to say that last night we had one of our final trainings and we officially hit our goal of recruitment.
Fantastic.
On September 6th. So we're very excited about that. Two things that I will say: if anybody on this call is one of those people who signed up, thank you. There are a couple of deadlines for you guys. Please make sure you reach out to us with your paperwork for payroll and with your lunch orders, because we do provide lunch, by this Tuesday so that we can get that processed. And for anybody who's on this call who didn't sign up for September 6th, but is interested in being a poll worker, we are already looking ahead to November 8th. We have another election in just a couple of months, and we need poll workers for that as well. So if you're interested and weren't able to do September 6th or are only hearing about this now, feel free to reach out to my office and let us know if you want to help us out in November. The one ask that my staff has for that is please reach out to us on September 7th. We have a lot going on between now and September 6th. Want to make sure we give you our full attention. So feel free to reach out to us on the 7th about helping us out.
Ben, can I interrupt just for a second? What I forgot to mention is that we're happy to accept questions from people who are joining us. If you do, please put them in the chat, which you will find at the bottom of your Zoom screen. And at the end of the presentations, we'll be glad to present the questions, and our Vice President Donna Silverman will collect the questions and will provide the information to Ben so that we can get answers for you. Sorry, I didn't mention that before. Anyway, back to you, Ben.
Perfect. So thank you. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Ben Kaufman. I'm the town clerk. We have a state primary election coming up. It is in 11 days. We have a countdown on our whiteboard right out here in my office, counting down the days towards that. We're very excited. It's going to be a very interesting election. We've got a lot of races that are on the ballot. And we have some new things that are happening this year. The state legislature passed the Votes Act and the governor signed it over the summer. And that expanded a lot of access for voting. It expanded vote by mail. So anybody who would like to get a mail-in ballot can get a mail-in ballot. And it expanded early voting. So people can come to town hall to vote early before election day. It also changed some of the deadlines for when things are due, such as your voter registration form or your request for a mail-in ballot. So a couple of important dates that we have coming up very soon. The first two are actually tomorrow. Tomorrow, August 27th, is the last day to register to vote for the September 6th primary election. Our office is going to be open until 5 p.m. tomorrow. You can also register to vote online through the state's voter registration system. But anybody who wants to vote September 6th needs to register by tomorrow. The other thing that happens tomorrow is it's the first day of early voting. In the front room of Town Hall here in room 103, starting at 10 a.m. tomorrow, we are going to have early voting. Every voter is eligible to vote early. It is you don't need to give a reason or an explanation, don't need to say you're out of town. Everybody is allowed to vote early. This upcoming Monday, the 29th, is the last day to request a vote by mail ballot. Every registered voter in Brookline received a postcard from the Secretary of the Commonwealth's office that you can fill out to request a vote by mail ballot. We also have applications available online, applications at our front counter, and there's an online portal through the Secretary's office where you can request a vote by mail ballot. We need those requests by Monday, the 29th at 5 p.m. to make sure that we can send them out in time for you to get it and send it back in to us. Early voting is actually going to run all week, starts on Saturday and runs clean through until Friday, September 2nd. That is the last day when you can vote early. And then perhaps the most important day, Tuesday, September 6th is election day. Polls are going to be open from 7 a.m. until 8 p.m. There's just a couple of the important dates coming up. So if you know somebody who needs to get registered, know somebody who wants to vote early, know somebody who wants to get a ballot out, mail to them, make sure they know and you know these dates so we can get you voting. There are new precincts and districts for this election. New maps for both precinct and state districts were drawn in 2021, and they went into effect for elections December 31st of 2021. So they will be in effect for these state primary elections. A lot of precincts have changed. You should have gotten some mail about it back in the spring and over the summer with your precinct location and your polling location. But if you're ever not sure, you can go to wheredoivotema.com. That's run by the Secretary of the Commonwealth's website. You can type in your address there and it will tell you where you can vote. So you can also see the precinct map the precinct map online at brooklinema.gov/precinct polling locations. And you can look at maps there. There's both the big map for the entire town, as well as smaller maps for each precinct. So you can look at them in a little bit more detail. So there are 3 precincts that have been split. And they're split by state representative districts. What this means is when we drew our precinct map, the state legislature was also drawing their state rep district maps. And those maps were not, did not line up in 3 places. One of them was in precinct 5, one of them in precinct 13, and one of them in precinct 14. So those precincts are now what are called split precincts, which means when you show up to vote on election day, everybody goes to the same place, but there's going to be a check-in table for 5, check-in table for 5A, and you're going to get a different ballot because you're going to have a different state representative race on it. So that is something that is helpful for voters to know. If you're in one of those split precincts and you go onto the webpage that I talked about with the precinct polling locations, it's also the one that's down at the bottom of this slide, you're able to actually see which precinct you're in, and you can see that line so you can kind of understand where it is. It's a little bit confusing, especially in precinct 5. The line looks very, very weird because of how the state drew it. So make sure you're familiar with that. And we're going to have extra poll workers at those polling locations to help guide voters through it. People always ask, where do I actually go to vote? We have polling locations all throughout town. They tend to be either in your district, in your precinct, or right next door. It is the same precincts as we had back in May. So if you showed up at the right precinct in May, you're fine, with one very important exception. Precinct 4, which had been at the old Lincoln School, is now back at Town Hall. So if you live in Precinct 4 and you voted at the old Lincoln School on Route 9 back in May, this election, you're going to want to show up at Town Hall. That is your polling location. It's a little bit more accessible, has better parking, and we wanted to make sure it was available for voters. So we moved it back there. If you're in one of the split precincts, you'll see 5A, 13, 13A, 14, and 14A. You vote at the same location, regardless of which side of the split you're on. You'll still show up at the New Lincoln School for 5 and 5A, at Runkle for 13 and 13A, and at Heath for 14 and 14A. So here's the question everybody asks, and Carlos actually had asked earlier in this. We have sample ballots available on the town clerk's webpage. So if you go to brooklinema.gov/town-clerk, you can actually see your ballot. And each ballot on the top right-hand side actually says the precinct it is for. So if you're not sure, you can look and see which precinct it has. And there are a lot of things that are on the ballot. It's a state primary election. So you have a governor, you have a lieutenant governor, attorney general, secretary of state, treasurer, and auditor. Those are all of the statewide offices that are going to be on the ballot. And then we have district-specific ones. And for most of these districts, Brookline has just one district that is represented by. Representative in Congress, counselor, senator, and general court. The exception to that is the representative in general court. We have 4 different state rep districts. So that is going to be different depending on which precinct you're voting in. We also have district attorney, sheriff, and county commissioner. So it's a pretty long ballot. There are a lot of races that are happening. So make sure that you're, reading up ahead of time, see some names that you're familiar with, do some research to make sure that when you see that ballot, you know who you want to vote for. The other thing that's important, because it is a primary election, there are 2 different ballots in each precinct. There's a Democrat ballot and a Republican ballot. If you're registered as a Democrat or Republican, you will vote your party's ballot. When you show up on election day, it actually will say in the book, it'll have a letter. It'll say D for Democrat or R for Republican, and you can only get that ballot. If you are unenrolled, which we all use interchangeably as independent, or if you have a political affiliation that is not Democrat or Republican, then you can get either party ballot. So if you are in the Libertarian Party, in the Green Party, if you are an independent, you can choose which ballot you want. So when you show up to vote, the poll worker will ask you which ballot do you want, and you can choose to have a Democrat or Republican ballot. Choosing the party ballot does not change your party enrollment. If you are an independent and you ask for a Democratic ballot, you continue to be unenrolled as an independent. It's always something people get a little bit confused by. When you fill out your vote by mail request, if you are an independent or have a political affiliation, you have to tell us what ballot you want so we can send you the right one. Some people ask if they can vote, a mishmash, some Democrat, some Republican. Unfortunately, you're not allowed to do that. You have to pick which ballot you want. When you show up at the polling location, on the wall, we hang specimen ballots. So if you show up at the polling location, you can go and check those, see which names are on those ballots, and pick which ballot you actually want. People always ask, can I vote by mail? And the answer is yes. The Votes Act allows any registered voter to request a vote by mail ballot. They do not need an excuse. They do not need to say anything. They just ask us for the ballot. You can request ballots online. You can request ballots in person in the clerk's office. You can request ballots by mail. And those requests must be received by August 29th at 5 p.m. So my advice to you, because of the post office, if you haven't requested your ballot yet, come on into our office and hand deliver your ballot, or do it online so we make sure we get it before August 29th. It happens every year, and it's always the worst feeling when we come in on September 1st and we have a request for a vote by mail ballot and it's too late and we can't send it out to you. It's fine, we can call you, you can come and vote in person, but it's always a bummer when that happens. If you have a vote by mail ballot, you must return it to our office and we must have it in our hand by 8 p.m. on election day when the polls close. In November, in the general election, there's an allowance for late arriving ballots that are postmarked on election day. That does not exist in September. If your ballot shows up on September 7th, we do not count it. So if you have your ballot and you're mailing it back to us and you're worried about the post office, we advise you to come and bring it by our office. It can be returned by mail. It can be returned by being dropped. We have a gray ballot drop box with a big orange sign on it out front that you can drop it in. Or you can bring it directly into my office as long as we are open. There are also two useful information links that are at the bottom of the slide. The first, there is an online vote by mail portal run by the Secretary's office. The link is there. If you go there, you can request the vote by mail ballot online. It happens instantaneously. You don't risk us getting your application post August 29th. There's also information generally on vote by mail available on the town clerk's page, brooklinema.gov/vote by mail. So you can go there and check it out if you have any questions. The other question is, somebody asked, can I vote early in person? Yes, all registered voters can vote early in person during the early voting period. Early voting occurs at Town Hall in room 103, which is the big front room we have here. And it starts this Saturday, the 27th, from 10 a.m. until 4 p.m., and also Sunday, the 28th, from 10 a.m. until 4 p.m. And then it happens all of this next week during our regular business hours. So if anybody wants to vote early in person, feel free to come on by starting tomorrow morning, and we can get you voting. The last link that I'm going to have here, Simon have here, is a bunch of helpful links for you. If you are interested in learning more information, you can register to vote online. And the link is there. You can also apply for a vote by mail ballot online with that link. A very important link, if you've already submitted your vote by mail ballot, you can actually track your ballot. There's a Track My Ballot through the Secretary of the Commonwealth's website, and it will tell you the status of your ballot. It tells you that we've received your application, that we've mailed it out, and that we've gotten your ballot back. That's really, really important, because if you are looking at it at, on Monday, September 5th, and we haven't gotten your ballot back, you might want to check in with us, make sure it gets to us before Election Day. And if it doesn't, because the post office is being slow, you might want to show up and vote on Election Day. So Track Your Ballot is an incredibly useful tool. It gets updated the same time we update our system. So if we've gotten your ballot and we scan it in, it'll be reflected there. So that's an incredibly useful link.
And Ben, does that apply also for early voting? So I applied for a mail-in, it hasn't arrived yet. Can I vote tomorrow instead?
So that also will apply for Track Your Ballot. It'll tell you if we've received your application. We sent out about 40,000 applications. We've so far gotten back about 8,000 of them. Because of the post office, some of them do get lost in the mail in one direction or the other. So if you're looking at Track My Ballot and it doesn't say that we've gotten your ballot yet, our advice is to come in person tomorrow, Sunday, or next week. You can vote in person. The rule around voting in person with a vote by mail ballot. If you ask for a vote by mail ballot and never send it back in, you can vote in person. As soon as you've sent your ballot back in, we've received it and marked it as received, you can't vote anymore. So if you go to track my ballot and we still haven't received your ballot yet, feel free to show up and vote during our early voting in person sessions. There are also a couple of links at the bottom to our page. There's the precinct polling location link, the early voting link, as well as the general information, brooklinema.gov/townclerk. We post a lot of information there, like sample ballots. That's a good place to go if you kind of have any questions about anything. So I'm going to make sure I share this slide with Ernie and Betsy and Donna so that the league has it and they can feel free to disseminate it. These are just a couple of very helpful links. So that's what I've got for my little presentation. I know there's a lot of information in there. I know it makes sense to me because I've been doing this for the last couple of months, but it might not make sense to everybody else. So happy to take any questions that people might have.